Hi guys, part 5 of the balancing project changes came out today. So we're going to dive straight into it and discuss what Tipsoft have done. And there's some really good stuff in there, some kind of average stuff, but we're going to take a look at it all. So first of all, a little note at the end of the post. Please note that our next patch will be released in 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks. So just in case you're expecting something in 2 weeks, don't. The next set of changes will be on the 14th of May, and I would imagine then there's going to be another set on the 28th of May, as Tipsoft said they're planning to do until the end of May. So I'm guessing we have 2 more rounds, part 6 and part 7 coming up. Just something to keep in mind. Now, moving on at the changes released today. First of all, we have density changes to Oromond Mountain Hideout. This is the Oromond Fury Dungeon, if you will. You've got 4 levels. They've got the Minotaurs on the top, on the +1, Furies on the 0, and then you've got like Undead Dragons, Lost Souls, Betrayed Wraiths and stuff like -1 and -2. And we also have changes to Fury Hell and increased monster density there. So I will say that these 2 changes are the weakest changes of the day, in my opinion. First of all, in the Oromond Mountain Hideout, the Fury Dungeon there, I ran through all 4 levels and I could barely tell any changes at all. I think maybe they added like 5 Furies on level 0 to increase the density a little bit, but hardly noticeable in my opinion. I think that's a bit of a miss. It was already huntable, I suppose, by like 300 EK, so they've only just improved that a little bit. So I guess they didn't want to overtune it, but really I haven't really felt anything significant here. So maybe it'll bump your experience there by like 5%, maybe, but nothing really too crazy. Now, Fury Hell is an interesting one because that place is super cool. Love the design, love the idea, absolutely hate the monsters there. The problem there was never density. The density there was okay. The problem was the mechanics of the monsters. They're constantly ranged monsters, invisible monsters, paralyzing, making you drunk, doing summons, reducing your skills. It's just a pain in the ass to hunt there. So unless they resolve that, increasing the monster density is not going to change anything. So I mean, it's a start. I would actually expect them to change Fury Hell or Fury Gate in subsequent balance patches, maybe part 6, maybe part 7. That would be interesting, because as it is, increasing the monster density will not be enough, just because it's a pain in the ass to hunt there. So that's all I have to say on this. I'm hoping to see some changes, maybe to Infernalist, maybe to Diabolic Imp. What else is there? Maybe the Dragonlisk. Maybe they need to tweak the mechanics of the monsters themselves to make it huntable. For now, nope. Moving on, we have changes to Upper Ramal. So this is basically the northern part of Ramal with the Choking Fears and Wretched Horrors. They've increased the monster density there, and they've also changed the energy sensitivity of Wretched Horrors and Choking Fears, basically making it so that energy element is now the best element to use. So first of all, I will just mention about Nightmare Isles. Energy element will now be the best element to use there, rather than ice or physical as it was before. Which means that EKs with best in slot energy weapons will be able to pull better numbers there by like a few percent, probably. I don't think it really changes anything for anybody else. Paladins, they might use thunderstorms instead of avalanches, but won't really make a difference. And, for mages also doesn't matter. So I think Nightmare Isles will be slightly better for solo EKs, and that's about it when it comes to the sensitivity changes. Now, with regards to Upper Ramal itself, it is crazy up there now. I just ran through. I've also got a screenshot from a friend, and it's absolutely mental. The density is really, really quite crazy. You can really do like massive pulls there. Rest in peace to the level 200s running to Gaz Garagoth, or whatever his name is, in a prison. There will be a lot of dead people there trying to run to the boss because the density there now is absolutely crazy. So I think overall, a huge plus, I would say, for this one, because we love density. More density is always fun. I don't quite know who the targets, is for this place still, because their raw numbers of Choking Fears and Wretched Horrors are kind of iffy. They're not really amazing monsters to hunt in the first place. So, increasing density, great. You can get more monsters, you can make bigger pulls, but the raw numbers are still kind of average, I think. So I don't know whether this is going to become like an amazing spot. I don't think so. I think like a solo paladin kiting 20 monsters around might make it work. Maybe this will be an alternative to Ramal for like a high level paladin. maybe they might be able to make it work. Maybe like a duo on a level 300. I'm not entirely sure who the target is, but in a vacuum, this is a very good change. The density is really crazy. Do be careful now when you run into Upper Shamwell because you might get overwhelmed. Next of all, we have changes to Seacrest Ground, which is totally out of nowhere. I was not expecting that, so really happy to see that. First of all, we've had some changes to the world change, so I'll talk about that. You now only need to kill 2,000 Seacrest Serpents instead of 3,000 to spawn the Renegade Quarrers, and now it spawns 2,000 Renegade Quarrers instead of 1,000 as before, which means that the efficiency is now 3 times what it was before. Instead of killing 3 Seacrest Serpents for 1 Renegade Quarry, it's now 1-to-1, which is really, really great. Makes that bestiary so much easier. If you're a bestiary hunter and you haven't done this bestiary yet, then rejoice because it is so much easier. In addition to this, we've had Earth sensitivity of Young Sea Serpent changed, which is okay. I mean, it was random that it had 0 when Sea Serpents weren't immune to Earth. So, good change, but really kind of meaningless. But the increased monster density in this spot is absolutely mental. You can also see a screenshot I went there. It is really good. And they've changed the density of everything. They've changed the density of like even abyssal calamaries, of all the quarries on the bottom floor. They've increased the density of everything, so that's great. This will also further make the world change quicker to cycle through to be able to kill 2,000 Seacrest Serpents. However, ultimately, I think this place kind of suffers from what I talked about in Upper Roshamel, is that just the raw numbers of the monsters here are just not that great. So even with increased density, I don't really know who's going to be making this place like the hunting ground for them. I think this is a great change for bestiary hunters, for renegade quarrers. I don't quite think this place is somehow going to be super huntable just, for someone doing experience. It's going to be better for bestiary, and that's about it. I think, a 300 EK hunting here, it was already relatively profitable. So I think just with the higher density, it's going to be even a little bit more profitable, a little bit more experience. But I still think this place is probably not going to be super popular or anything like that. But welcome changes, definitely for the renegade quarrers, makes it so much easier. So definitely positive. Now we're going to move on to the biggest bulk of the changes today, which are Warzone 1, Warzone 2, and Warzone 3 changes. As you can see, there's a lot of text. And just before we dive into Warzone 1, I will say that about 6 months ago, before the rebalancing project even kicked off or was announced, I myself made a little list of places I would like revisited and rebalanced. And Warzone 1 was the #1 spot on my list of places that needed a rework, because this place was absolute ass before these changes that you can see right here. In my opinion, this was the worst place in the whole game. Just absolutely unhuntable, dog crap. Just would not recommend this place to anybody ever. So I'm really happy to see that they are changing it. And yeah, I guess let's take a look at what they've changed here. So first of all, we have increased EXP gain from the boss from 35k to 400k. They've done this for all the 3 bosses. As I always mention, I'm always happy to see the changes to XP and bosses. In this case, I don't think it's really relevant because, war zones are usually killed as like the whole server with like 100, well, maybe not 100 people, but like 30 people. If you're going to get, 12k experience on average per person instead of 1k experience per person, it's, irrelevant, right? You still can't solo kill these bosses because they heal too much. So in this case, I don't think it really matters. They increase experience. And they've also added the 2 corridors to allow for more efficient hunts. You can see this in the little image that I have right here. They've added those 2 corridors here, which means you can loop through the cave, which is great, but also actually means it's super easy now to get to the boss. You can just go whip and you're straight in the boss room, just like a couple of short corridors instead of, having to go all the way around through all the monsters. So Warzone 1 will definitely be a lot easier now for public war zones because there's way less, it's a shorter path to the teleporter. So that's great. Now, looking at the changes to the monsters, like I mentioned, these monsters were total crap, so they've really changed a bunch of stuff around invisibility, about drunken, poison fields, speed debuffs, running at low health. They've bumped the experience of hideous fungus by about 10%, and they've made fire sensitivity of all the monsters a bit better. So basically, this is a fire spot now. But I think this place suffers from the teleport mechanics. So you know how you have the teleporter, which randomly spawns massive groups of monsters as you go into the boss. And my opinion is that while that's quite a fun mechanic, that's the reason why this place will never be a viable hunting ground, because it needs to be balanced around that teleporter. If they made the monsters just regular loop, viable, then just abusing the teleporter mechanic would be even more crazy and just absolutely broken. So while those are great changes, I think unless they like massively increase the experience of all these monsters and loot, it's still not going to be worth it, because they still give barely any experience and loot for the difficulty. And if they were to do that, increase the experience and loot, then people would just abuse the teleport mechanic. So I think as long as the teleport mechanic remains the way it is, I don't think Warzone 1 will ever be a viable hunting ground, because it will either be always broken or always underpowered. So that's where I think I am with these changes. I'm super happy that they changed in this place just in general, because like I say, it's just awful. So definitely going to be a little bit easier, a little bit less annoying to go through it. Still don't think this will ever be a viable hunting ground because of what I just talked about. So I hope someone proves me wrong, but I think this will ultimately just be a Warzone 1 boss kind of hunting ground where you just go for the reward. Moving on, we have Warzone 2. So again, we have the changes to the experience, but then we've also got a teleporter at the end of the cave, which now brings you to the front, which allows for a nice little loop. So that's great. Then we have a change to Infected Weeper, which changes the fire sensitivity from 0 to -100, which means that you can GFB them or attack them with fire attacks to heal them. This is awesome. Warzone 2 is about to become so much easier. So much easier without people grieving and killing the Infected Weeper. So the loop of Warzone 1, Warzone 3 is probably going to be shorter by a few minutes. So that's great. I love those kind of random quality of life changes. There is, like, I suppose, tiny bit of potential grieving that if someone's hunting in Warzone 2, I suppose you could go in and just hit the Infected Weepers with fire GFBs all the time so that they can't kill them, or make it more difficult for them to kill them. Maybe there's some room for grieving, but hopefully not. Now, for the rest of the monsters that you'll be hunting here, they've increased the experience somewhere around 10-ish% on average. They've increased the ice sensitivity, which is great, and removed some of the annoying invisibility, mana drain damage. So my personal opinion is that this place will be viable in some combination. I haven't given it a proper test yet because it's quite a hard spot and I haven't had enough time. And I'm not entirely sure who the target here is either. But I think somebody will make it work for this to be like a BTS spawn at least. I would imagine like a solo EK will probably like this place with ice. I think maybe a paladin, maybe solo paladin will do here. Maybe a duo. Hard to say. I think this place is viable after these changes. I think it's definitely a positive. I'm looking forward to test it over somebody else to test and see what numbers you can pull. This one, I think my verdict is good changes. I'm looking forward to see how viable it is. Hard to say for now. Warzone 3, same changes at the start. Increased experience, teleported, take a bring to the back, to the start. So great changes overall. And honestly, with the monster changes, this is basically my conclusion here is exactly the same as in Warzone 2. Except you're going to be using energy instead of ice in this spawn. So again, I'm not 100% sure who is going to be hunting here, who this is intended for. But I do think with these changes, this will be a viable respawn now. I do think, a solo EK or like maybe a duo or a solo paladin, something I think will be viable here for at least sort of a BTS spawn. Honestly, looking at some of the values that they've changed, like the Cliff Strider has like a 20% experience increase. The All Walker is about 15%. I think there's something here. I think Warzone 3 will also be somehow viable. Remains to be seen by who exactly and at what level range, because in my experience, these monsters hurt a lot. So you do have to be careful not to die. It's not going to be a level 400 solo spot, I think. If anything, it may be like a level 600 solo spot. But we'll see. We'll see. But I do think it's a good change and will be viable. So, this is actually everything from today. So let's just quickly run through it again. These changes pretty irrelevant for now, I would say. Upper Roshamo, crazy good density, probably going to be viable for like a solo paladin. Crazy density changes for Seacrest ground, again, good for the mini world change, probably not a viable hunting ground. Warzone 1 changes, much easier to access the boss, much shorter path, probably not going to be a viable hunting ground in my opinion. Warzone 2 probably will be a viable hunting ground in my opinion, so good changes, looking forward to see what someone manages to get here. And same for Warzone 3 in my opinion, viable hunting ground now, at least sort of a B tier, looking forward again to testing it a bit and seeing who can make this spawn work. So I think those are ultimately pretty good changes, happy to see them, good job Tipsoft. Obviously can tweak a bit further some of these values, and yeah, I guess let me know guys in the comments what you think, what you're looking to see in the next 2 sets of changes, and thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.